Thank you everyone for taking the time to be with us today. Our panel today is on supporting builders and devs within the Web3 tooling space. So I'll get our panelists to introduce themselves in, actually, why don't we start with that? We'll start at the very end.
Hey, my name is Slava. I'm CTO at dRPC.org. We're basically building infrastructure for multi-chain future, and we trying to support dApps that built on 80 plus blockchains right now. Yeah, I think that's it.
Awesome. My name is Jovonni. Thanks for having me. I'm a DevRel engineer for Agoric, and Agoric is a layer 1 with JavaScript smart contracts and specializes in orchestrating complicated cross-chain logic just with simple JavaScript async and await stuff. So I've been an engineer for about 16 years, been building in Web3 since 2015, and I never turned around. So pleasure to be here.
Cool. Thanks for having us. My name is Bastien. I lead the solution engineering team at Alchemy. Alchemy is a Web3 development platform. So for any of your blockchain needs, usually we have tooling for that. And previously, I've been in the blockchain space since 2017. I was running my own company in the Oracle space before that. So yeah, excited to be here with you guys.
Pleasure to be here. Hey everyone, my name is Sipan. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Hex and Cybersecurity and R.XYZ, Remedy. We're basically a cybersecurity company focusing on providing both the security tooling, security audits, different type of security solutions and products. And everything is based on the actual innovation and bringing the novelty into the space and basically filling in the gaps in the infrastructure and in the tooling that we see right now in Web3. Yeah.
Perfect. And then my name is Salty. I'm from Cube3. Cube3 is a real-time crypto fraud prevention platform. So we take in raw blockchain data, contextualize that with Web2 data, and try to protect our clients and their clients from crypto fraud, smart contract exploits, all the negative stuff you hear about crypto. So as I mentioned before, our panel is focused on Web3 tooling, specifically as it pertains to builders and devs. And I think it's a really important topic, specifically because our industry is always on it's always brimming with innovation, right? We always hear about all these amazing ideas, and every single cycle you see these amazing projects that come out and they'll develop into these multi-billion-dollar projects. And the thing is that without the tools that and many of which that are represented on this panel, those ideas and that innovation remain ideas, and they don't actually come to fruition. So I think that having these different types of tools, the analogy I like to use is you can have the best painter in the world, but if they don't have an easel, a canvas, the paint, all those things, right? The reality, it just lives up here. So I guess the first question that I have is within each of your projects and your companies, how do you enable devs to build either more efficiently or more effectively? And what unique challenges are you guys looking to solve within this space? And Sipan, we'll start with you since we started the other way before.
Oh yeah, sure. That's actually a great question. There is a lot of challenges for builders and devs in the space, and even more challenges for the security researchers. I personally think that the biggest obstacle in a way to achieve the mass adoption for the whole field is actually it was and it still remains the cybersecurity issues. We see billions of dollars actually flowing from the legitimate projects, from the users, from the builders to the black hats pockets, and that's not acceptable. The amounts are too big, and Remedy, the platform that I'm representing today, is designed to solve these questions. There is no silver bullet in cybersecurity, as you know, Salty. There is no single solution to all the troubles because the field is very, very, very wide. So our approach is to fill in those gaps, to identify the gaps in the cybersecurity space, and to bring solutions to both businesses, projects, builders, and cybersecurity experts and bounty hunters that want to bring the value to the space.
Perfect. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So our perspective at Alchemy is, slightly different in that we can empower some of these security use cases. If we take security as an example, you need the nodes, you need blockchain data to be then able to analyze what's going on the blockchain. And so when we started in 2017, we were building a financial platform, trying to assess trading signals on the blockchain. And we realized, getting blockchain data, running these nodes was actually, pretty hard. And so we turned into building a company that specializes in running the nodes to start, and then expanded, branched out into a broader like Web3 development platform. So our core business was focusing on running these nodes, that infrastructure at scale. That means anytime you interact and you want to build on the blockchain, you need access to a node. And then we branched out to building other products on top, which we call data services, which give you tools to more easily index data, get data quickly from the blockchain space. In fact, we have some people from our team here today if you want to speak to them about that. And then again, more recently, there's a lot of talk about rollups. So we used our knowledge about infrastructure to build tools for developers to easily launch a rollup, and then for their developers to easily integrate and work on the rollup. So it's kind of like an overview of how we solve some of the challenges.
That's awesome. And I've been using Alchemy for a long time, so big fan.
Thank you.
So I'm actually curious, how many developers do we have in the room? Raise your hand if you write code at all, okay? Now keep your hand up if you know Solidity out of all you people. Okay, keep your hand up if you know Rust. Okay, interesting. Keep your hand up if you know JavaScript. Almost everybody raised their hand again on the JavaScript part. And it's interesting because in this space, you have a lot of JavaScript developers because at default, they have to integrate some UI with what they're doing on the back end with contracts, et cetera. And so with Agoric, starting from the notion of writing JavaScript smart contracts actually lowers the barrier to entry a lot just by itself. But when we're talking about the problem space of cross-chain applications, right? The notion of having an application that spans multiple chains and they work together, this notion of orchestrating how these contracts work together, that's actually a very hard problem space for developers. And the developer experience sucks for it so far. Because even now as a user, you have to, when you're using an application, worry about which chain that you're interacting with. But now with chain abstraction, that burden is being shifted from the user to the developer now, where the developer is going to have to enforce what the users expect to even happen by orchestrating or actually being aware of what chains you're using. So with chain abstraction, it removes the burden from both parties, really. Because if you do it right, like with Agoric's orchestration API, if you do it right, then neither party has to worry about what chain they're interacting with. So being able to express your imagination in JavaScript using async and await and just triggering complex cross-chain interactions that way, where it's just inline execution, it's a totally different magic power or it's a totally different power, I would say, or superpower, I should say. And I think that starting there actually builds the foundation for truly ideal developer experiences, at least for both users and developers, really.
Yep. So for us, I think a lot of that was said about Alchemy also applies to us. However, what we are best in is multi-chain, as I mentioned previously. Like we support 80+ blockchains, so a lot of our clients were struggling before working with us because they had to buy from 5, 10, at some point, in some cases more RPC providers, and that's of course is a big pain. We solve this pain because right now, for example, guys from SushiSwap, they are deployed on I think 30+ chains. They basically only work with us, pay one place, all statistics in one place. That's easy for them. And yeah, as was mentioned, there's a lot of new blockchains and what more will be coming. So I think, we will try to solve this problem that you don't have to find, providers and infrastructure providers for each weird, chain that maybe launched yesterday, but you for some reason need it.
Perfect. Thank you for those responses. And Jovi, I guess I'll double click on something that you mentioned there around interoperability, right? I think that even a simpleton like me who's not on the dev side of things understands that interoperability and cross-chain is a problem, right? In an ideal world, a builder or a dev would have access to build, their single platform on a single language and with a set of single tools, but we're not quite there yet, right? And I think that all of you are helping us to get there. So maybe touch on a little bit of how your tools are either, focusing on helping alleviate that problem, whether it's, from the cross-chain side of things, interoperability. I'll let you guys have the pick there. And maybe Jovi, we'll start with you since it was your topic you brought up.
Okay, this is a rabbit hole, so I'll try not to go too long. But I think we're slowly moving away from developers having to care about what languages they implement in, because if you're doing anything vanilla in Solidity or any language, you have these templates. Like OpenZeppelin gives you templates, like Confio gives you templates if you're using like Sylvia for CosmWasm. So I think the fact that when developers are making these vanilla tokens, they really just get to focus at the application layer. So the fact that, if you have a contract today and let's say you want to deploy on 30 different chains like SushiSwap, now imagine having to have a layer on top of that where you don't have to change your contracts and upgrade them. You could just orchestrate amongst them. That right there is an interesting layer of abstraction, because a lot of times, if you have, let's say, a contract on all these 30 different chains, you want to do an upgrade to use some cross-chain bridge thing, now you got to upgrade your contract. Or if they're like proxy implementations, you got to make another implementation and point the proxy to it as Solidity or something. But being able to just write one more language that we all love, JavaScript or TypeScript, and being able to orchestrate messages across these contracts you've already written, that right there opens up a whole wide realm of opportunities for developers to not only change their own experience, but change the experience for their users. So with Agoric, we have this orchestration API to make that even easier, because it's a really hard problem. And I could talk about that all day, really.
Yeah, thanks for that. Actually, I think a lot of the tooling that's being built on this panel is complementary, right? I think the way we solve it at Alchemy is twofold. So one is supporting more chains. I think the dRPC side, they touch on this too. It's just a real need from teams to just have RPC access or just tooling on these newer chains. So that's one. We went from 7 chains to 30 plus in this year. And then the other piece is running that performantly, making sure for a lot of these new chains that might have an ecosystem that's less mature or different client types or software that you run that is not as easy to run or sometimes a bit more flaky, making sure, one, we can run that at scale to handle the needs of a lot of our teams have, we're processing billions of requests a month. So you need to make sure that our infrastructure can handle that. And one part of our infrastructure is obviously the software client that you run for these chains. So really, I'd say, that's the two ways we solve it. One, provide support to more chains, and then ensuring that we run this performantly, and we build a lot of our expertise is around doing so. I'd say these are the two ways we're trying to make that cross-chain feature possible, and we could touch on rollups as well. But yeah, I would leave it at that for now.
Perfect. Thank you. Any comments from either of you? If not, I can move on to the next one.
Interoperability, I think it remains the ideal state of that remains still a utopian understanding of it. There is a real hard trade-offs in the interoperability, especially
the security side.
Especially the security side. Thank you so much, because you're multiplying the attack surface for the black hats. And it's been pretty evident for the last couple of years that last maybe 3 or 4 years that the breaches especially they're deserving the special attention from the hackers and black hats, because instead of needing to find bug on just one side, you have now options where to look at, right? So again, there is no silver bullet in cybersecurity that can solve all the existing issues. That's why at Hexsense and Remedy we're approaching everything one by one. It's gonna be done step by step, right? So our next generation bug bounty platform, for example, it doesn't care on what chain you build, even if it's Web 2 and there is no decentralization involved at all. We can help there. But our main tech, Glider, it's especially built for the EVM-like chains and Solidity, and I believe we've built something that is right now deserving to be called the most efficient vulnerability scanner or vulnerability finding engine for the EVM and Solidity. So yeah, one step at a time. Next thing's gonna be Rust, maybe. That way we will cover maybe 90% of the Web3, right?
Yeah.
The one thing I want to add is just, chain abstraction is great, but abstractions can only go so far. So as previously was mentioned, there's somebody still have to run those nodes in the end. And that's how we're trying to help this space by doing that. So, but also kind of at dRPC, we're trying to a little bit level up the competition because of our model is a little bit different as we see ourselves more like data marketplace. So like we kind of actually don't host our nodes mostly. We have a data marketplace. There's 30 plus companies right now compete in this marketplace. And what interesting benefit it brings is that the chains that have less hype, less attention, are typically struggling with infrastructure space. And in our case, we actually support a lot of them because those having a benefit of having 30 plus companies, there's some weird guys that for some reason run nodes for, I don't know, this weird blockchain. So like, yeah, we in this space, we're kind of trying to also, level competition between blockchains. So it was the winning would be merit-based, not like, who has better marketing.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I appreciate all of the comments. I guess, interoperability definitely a pain point. And I'm sure that there's many, and you guys have experienced a lot of that, especially with your client base. I guess my next question would be, moving kind of to the solution side of things. What kind of resources do you guys, now whether that's in features or actual support in terms of supporting your clients, how do you guys look to help allowing your builders to actually focus on what matters most, which is building, instead of things like potentially security or managing infrastructure?
I can start.
Sure, please.
That's actually a great question. Remedy, the 360 security platform that we've built, it's still in beta, but it's amazing. I encourage everyone to try. It's absolutely free. So it consists of two parts. The first part is the next generation bug bounty platform, powered by ZK Prover, to help the security researchers to get a mathematical proof if they're actually reporting duplicate report, because we've seen that's a big pain point. And the second part is Glider. So Glider is the technology that we've built and is right now available at r.xyz. So we basically built the very first Solidity query engine that works with the data flow and control flow graphs. So basically using the Python API, you can describe any kind of scenario, bug, vulnerability, whatever, and find it across the whole blockchains. So I do think that this approach will lead us in some time to a state where one vulnerability or one exploit that we see should only exist once until it is described in a query by Glider, and then we can catch all the similar projects that are all the projects that are affected by similar or the same vulnerability. So this is basically the tooling and the solutions that we're providing right now. But it's, again, we're in beta, and there are so many really exciting things to be happening really soon.
Cool. Thanks for running us through that as well. I think on the Alchemy front, it's a spectrum. So you'll find developers that are very knowledgeable about the blockchain space. And for instance, again, I'll use security as an example. We also power a lot of security teams. And most of these teams, they want to get every single piece of data on the blockchain because, if they're missing data, they can just, mess up their models and the security assumptions that they're then providing to their customers, right? So in that bucket of customers, pretty technical customers, what they'll want to do is they want to access as much data as possible. They want to access the underlying nodes. But on the other front, you're going to have teams, that are building wallets, for instance, right? Or that are going to be building other products that we use every day. And they don't necessarily need to access the node itself, in that we provide APIs that give them, for instance, you can pass in an address and we'll tell you, all the assets that are owned by a specific user, right? So again, we call that data services. We have a bunch of products there. We also, roughly 1-2 years ago, with the launch of ERC 4337, which brings account abstraction, we've also built a lot of tooling there to simplify launching small contract accounts. So we also see a lot of teams using that. So really, again, it's a spectrum. We started off with the most raw form of product, so to speak, and then we built on top of it to provide abstractions that developers can easily use. So that's pretty much how we solve it today.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love Alchemy's. He didn't pay me to be here, but I love Alchemy's like suite of tools. I really do. So like, as I think about this question, because you guys just covered a lot of the space, I'll try to focus on when people are writing code, not when they're interacting with the node, but when they're actually writing code. And so, one thing for us is, we talk about this JavaScript layer that serves as an orchestration layer around all of your contracts on different chains. But even when it comes down to like writing those contracts on your machine, right? What we do is we have this thing called multi-chain testing, which uses Starship, and Starship uses Kubernetes. And so you pretty much have this config file, YAML, and then you'll configure what you want your nodes to be. And like, you can easily configure relayers between the nodes, because as we know, relayers sit between the nodes to facilitate the cross-chain interaction. But with Agoric, we have this dApp that you can play with right now called dApp Orchestration Basics. It's just one repo you can go to. It's an end-to-end application of a contract and a React application. And they talk to each other, obviously. But in that, what you can do is when you're building your cross-chain applications, it's good to have an environment where you can watch packets go back and forth, because it's easier to debug when you're actually, when you're building cross-chain apps, it's hard not just to write, but also to debug them. And so with this specific dApp that we give you, you can just spin this up and it'll give you a whole local environment with many chains and many relayers. And then you can simply, because it's JavaScript, you can use a debugger to step through and add breakpoints in your cross-chain application, which is just unheard of for the devs in the room. And so, for us, we like to give tooling to the developers to make it safer, right? But also easier for you to do these complicated cross-chain things and make sure that they're working, aside from doing like verification and fuzzing and stuff like that. Just having the infrastructure alone to build it, we try to lend a lot of tools to developers for that, and a bunch of other stuff, right? But I wanted to highlight that because you guys mentioned, at the node level, RPC level, or data level, yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to be obvious, but from my interactions with developers, I think like mostly they have three things on mind. It's first reliability, then latency, and then cost. Maybe cost the first. For different companies, the order is different. So like we trying to focus on that. So like that, and we're doing that mostly with our pricing, because we have a pay-as-you-go option where you basically top up some money, and we will deduct the money from your account per request. So and the price basically is linear, so it doesn't depend on how much you use our infrastructure. So it always goes linear with the amount of requests. So you don't have to think about oh, maybe I will have sudden growth, and I will run out of my option like my package, and I will pay like 10 times more for each request after that, because in our case it doesn't matter how much you spend, the price is always the same. So like you don't have to think about whether you won't have user, because like we also won't burn your money in the end of the month. So if you don't have you overestimated your spendings, no problem. If you're underestimated, also no problem. Yeah, and that's, I think, what a lot of developers like about our solution, that they don't have to think about, do those calculations beforehand. And also, of course, we're trying to, to be focused on having great support, and because of how our pricing works, we also have this basically elastic, infrastructure where you can have almost as much as you want. We don't have rate limits, stuff like that. So you basically, if to work with us, you just top up some money and you're done with it. And you can start building, not thinking about reliability costs until you run out of money, of course.
That's amazing.
Rate limits are amazing, by the way.
Perfect. All right. So we have about, I think I'm short, so I can barely see it, but probably around 5 minutes left. And I want to change the conversation a little bit. So obviously, our industry is always exciting. I think the last couple weeks have been extra exciting. So I'm keen to hear if any of the panelists have a spicy hot take. We've had a lot going on: election, all-time highs, AI meme coin that hit $500 million. I will preface it by saying that this can be reflective of your own views, not necessarily your company's. So feel free to take a swing at it, and whoever wants to jump up, feel free.
Sure, do you want to go first, or I'm happy to go first? I think it's a hot take, but also probably not that much of a hot take. I think we talked about rollups, which is kind of the new up and coming thing, and how at least on our end, we built the infra to support any rollup. I think if you are looking to launch a rollup, really, look. I guess, how can I phrase this? Just think twice about how you're going to be bringing users and how you're going to differentiate on the rollup front. How you attract users to your chain, how you bring liquidity over. I think, for instance, Base is a case study in how to do it well. I think they did extremely well and managed to differentiate their rollup. It's an OP-based rollup. But a lot of teams, I think, are looking at this in the same way teams were looking, or companies were looking at launching tokens in 2017, 2018. As it gets easier to launch a rollup. So I think, my hot take is not all rollups are going to make it. I'm, pretty convinced of that. That's my personal opinion. But, we are here to power teams that, want to launch a rollup, do it easily at scale and performantly.
Yeah.
With this one.
Maybe I will go next because I have a complimentary, hot spicy take. So but I have to apologize for that in advance. Please, bro, just one more rollup. Please, just one more rollup. I promise it will solve all the UX problems. Please, and onboard 1 billion users. Just please, one more rollup, and you will make more money for us. Thank you.
Jovi, I think you had one, no?
I do have a thought. So this is personal, not on the Agoric side. So, between chains, you have this relayer, right? And, a lot of the incentive layer for relayers is not really well figured out yet. There's a lot of specs out there, but for some reason, they're not really adopted. Like IBC has an incentive spec that's not really widely adopted. But if you look at things like MetaMask snaps and different wallets in the browser, you're starting to see a slow move towards something that they call self-relay, where a user can just use a wallet that will publish a message on one chain, wait for its success, and it's it being included in the block with low with no uncling and stuff like that. And then once it receives that, it'll post the other message on the other chain. And so essentially you have it where the relayers, if they're not careful, can be pushed out of at least that side of the business, which is sometimes really profitable for some relayers. So that's one hot take. I think that self-relay is going to be, and it's cheaper for users too, right? So I think self-relay is going to be even bigger, which would kind of be existential threat to relayers. But I also think the rug pull problem in this whole industry is one of the biggest challenges, in my opinion, that is stopping mass adoption. Because when you ask people if they ever did anything with crypto, a lot of times they have a connotation about, oh no, I leave that stuff alone a little bit, because it's a lot of people get scammed, their rug pulled, and that's a big problem by itself. And I think that's another rabbit hole. But yeah, I'll leave it at that. Both of those I can go really deep on, but I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I got a couple of hot takes. Whatever I say next is my personal opinion. It does not represent the company policy. So the first one, the moon landing, was definitely staged. 9/11 is an inside job, and we don't need any L2s. Really, really soon we will not need them.
Perfect. And so
Nice.
I'll give mine, and I'll preface this by saying this is semi a joke. So I saw earlier today that Charles Hoskinson was talking about on a live stream that he's going to be one of Trump's advisors and have an input on crypto policy in the U.S. And I was chatting with my girlfriend, and she made the joke that she's like, "That's crazy. Cardano might actually have to build something now if that happens." So we only got a couple seconds left, so I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you all for joining me today. Big round of applause for our panelists, and hope you enjoyed.
Thanks for attending.
Thanks for hosting us.